Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we're shaping the future of floriculture, one conversation at a time. We talk with the growers, leaders, and innovators shaping tomorrow's greenhouse industry today. From market trends, next generation plants, and innovative production, to the challenges and breakthroughs redefining what it means to grow. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. Let's dig into what's next together. The floriculture industry never stops innovating, and that includes growers as well as industry suppliers. This episode is the second part of our Leaders in Floriculture podcast series, where we talk to experts in plant breeding, plant health, and greenhouse technology about the important roles they play in innovation, sustainability, and helping to shape the future of floriculture. My first conversation in this episode is with Paul Golden, Director of Sales Commercial Growing at Prospiant. Paul and the Prospiant team are optimistic about the future of the floriculture industry and are focused on innovation through improved products and services. Keep listening to learn more. Let's jump in and let's talk about the vision for the future at a company like Prospiant. What does that look like for you guys? How is that evolving?
I look at the first of all, I kind of step back and I look at the industry as a whole before looking at our role in the industry. Just like
Sure.
I'm cautiously optimistic about where we are in the floriculture and the CEA markets. I think that there's a lot of potential there for growth still, primarily linked to all the investment being done in North America. It seems like it's probably the largest hub of investment going on internationally right now is in North America.
Yeah.
And I'm optimistic about the U.S. housing market kind of bouncing back. So the single family houses will rebound here soon. Probably gradual, but there's already been pretty steady demand there. So from a demand side, I feel pretty optimistic about the industry. Real GDP growth is up still, as everyone knows from Charlie Hall's conversations. Demand for ornamentals, in particular in bedding, and then also transplants for CEA are pretty strong. We're seeing a lot of growth in that sector. And then with the tropicals and the perennials, I think those are being boosted by the multifamily housing development that's been taking place in the last few years.
Sure.
I think a lot of the Gen Zs and millennials, even though they're a different customer base from who traditionally buys the bedding plants, I think we're seeing a shift in attention from maybe bedding to more tropicals going into their house, kind of replacing outdoor space for more private space. And with the developers, the landscapers that are building these multifamily units, I think we're seeing more perennial growth as a whole. I think that's just across the board, no matter which territory I'm in, I'm seeing more growers bring on perennials. So we play real strong in the ornamental bedding markets, in the nursery markets, and very, very strong in the propagation market industry as well for tropicals. So as a whole, I think Prospiant's well positioned with our product offerings and our services and our knowledge base in serving those markets. I'm pretty optimistic in that regard about where Prospiant stands.
Well, and it's good too that you guys aren't living in like your own bubble. Like what you guys do and how you guys evolve for the future is dictated largely by what's happening in the industry as a whole. So that's a very refreshing approach that you guys take. I do want to ask, as you use that knowledge to build your own future, what does innovation look like for you guys? Why is it an important part of what you guys do? And what do you think the next wave of innovation is going to look like for a company like Prospiant?
Well, for Prospiant, it's one of our core values. We have 4 core values as an organization: make it better, make it right, make it together, and make an impact. And I think that innovation kind of hits on 2 of those 4 core values. To make it better, just kind of challenging old assumptions, revising our standards, and continuous improvement of our products and services. And then make an impact, I think, is we could do that all day long, but how important is it to the industry? And are we really getting the most bang for our buck out of what we're trying to innovate? So it's definitely one of our core values. And I'll say that we put a lot of investment in the last year. We just kind of moved into our new facility in Cincinnati. Put a lot of investment in the last year into improvement of our manufacturing lines. But as far as innovation goes, we've also put a lot of time and energy into improving our products. So we already had a pretty high standard for our structural product lines, but basically everything we did was heavily engineered and purpose built. But what we've done the last year or so is we've kind of brought on some team members and some new softwares and some new capabilities to better model what we've been engineering to improve the value to the customer. So using steel more appropriately. So what we may do is we may size tubing a little bit different from what we did before, uh,
Yeah.
to put strength in areas where we needed more strength, and also to reduce costs in areas where we didn't need as much material. We've basically been able to model this now with our new technologies, our new tools, and our engineers that we're working with, so that we could basically, from the outside, it looks like the same structure as we provided before, but internally, it's a lot stronger and more resilient than it's ever been because we had to keep up with new building codes and things
Yeah.
of that nature. But also, we're just trying to be more competitive because at the end of the day, we're in an industry where we're selling a commodity item.
Mhm.
It's steel. It's a steel commodity, so it's a bit the opportunity there for us lies in a more efficient design,
Sure.
and in services. So the other area where we're trying to make innovation is in our services. So we become more of a design build company, looking for turnkey opportunities. And we still serve customers that are just looking for maybe just materials. But we've been able to do is we've built a team of engineers and designers and project managers that are better capable than ever before to
Yeah.
uh, construct our projects, integrate in HVAC. That's just like your four pipe heating and cooling systems of your semi sealed climate controlled CA houses.
Yeah.
Integrate irrigation, control systems, shading systems, automated growing systems. Combine that all into one package design, and we provide the full install of that. So it's a
Mhm.
service that we never really did up until I'd say the last 4 or 5 years. We did it in the CEA markets, but we didn't do it as much for the ornamental markets.
Okay.
Now we're kind of taking what we've learned in the past decade, doing that for the CEA markets, we're applying it towards all of our different industries. So whether it's
Okay.
institutional, um, floriculture, or CEA, we're providing that same service.
Okay. Awesome. I do want to ask briefly about the whole concept of sustainability because that kind of ties into everything that this industry is all about. For a company like Prospiant, how is sustainability an important part of your company culture, and how does that tie into some of the projects that you work on?
Oh, it's heavy in our culture for sure. I mean, it went into all the considerations of building our new factory there in Cincinnati, but it's also going into, of course, our inputs and our materials too. We're considering that, where we're sourcing materials. But I think our best way of kind of really focusing on sustainability is really reducing the cost to operators
Mm.
and the amount of energy that they use in particular. So we're trying to come up with more efficient greenhouse glazing systems so that they could be lower cost to operators and use less energy. One of the things that we've done recently is we've kind of taken this approach to this universal glazing system, which allows people to get into a structure with a lower cost glazing. So let's just
Okay.
say the polycarbonate glazing, but then to be able to adapt that to glass down in the future for more light transmission,
Okay.
or the vice versa for higher levels of insulation. This universal glazing system, it's a little aluminum that goes on the structure. And what we're trying to do as an organization is we're trying to minimize the amount of unique inventory parts for all these different types of glazing systems we had before, into just having um, a standard type of extrusion that can adapt to any type of covering, basically,
Okay.
and that allows us to put more inventory of that particular universal part in our on our shelf to be able to quickly react to our customers
Sure.
versus um, having a bunch of unique parts that we have to go custom fabricate every time somebody needs a replacement or wants to start a new project up. So this
Yeah.
is something a service or a product, and ultimately it's a turnaround time that we're trying to improve upon for our customers.
As you look ahead and you kind of as you think about everything that we talked about, up to this point. Within the segment of floriculture and ornamentals, what excites you the most about the future of this industry? What are you most looking forward to?
Well, I'm very curious to see what AI does to the industry. I think we've already seen quite a bit in machine learning for reducing labor for ornamental growers, and for that matter, even some CEA growers. I think we've all seen the sticking machines, and we've also seen machine learning and controls to try to improve the energy efficiency of a greenhouse. I think that's going to continue. Um, Not just in the greenhouse, but also, at our manufacturing level. I think we'll be able to start using AI tools to reduce cost of components a little bit more and speed up design turnarounds. So I think this is all stuff that's in place, and we're starting to see the very onset of it. It's hard to say whether that's going to be a 5-year turnaround time
Yeah.
before it's ready. Before everyone's working in that same capacity, or whether it's right around the corner. I don't have a good indicator of that, but I can say that AI is certainly the hype right now,
Mhm.
which I imagine you other interviews will probably talk about.
Yeah, and to your point there, I don't think anybody has the answer to that over what kind of a turnaround time frame you're looking at for something like this because, the sky's the limit, but everybody approaches it in different ways. So, how that's going to play out in the future, I think is a question for everybody.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think there's a lot of potential for us as a supplier to the industry to utilize it to reduce our costs and turnaround time. I also think there's a lot of potential in the industry um, for our customers that are operating to reduce their cost and improve their products.
I next caught up with Christopher Hagi, Vice President of Account Management and Sales at Container Centralen. We talked about how the company's focus on sustainability traces back to its roots, the development of RFID technology to allow for active data tags on racks, and the potential for AI-based real-time rack scanning. So, Chris, I want to first talk about sustainability. And at a company like Container Central, and how sustainability has become an important part of your company culture.
Yeah. That's interesting because it's essentially it's grown from that, right? So we have European roots starting in the mid 70s, and that's essentially what it was based on. For the European floriculture market to find a reusable platform that was consistent from grower all the way through trucking companies, retailers, and for it to be reusable, sustainable. So Europe was way ahead of the curve on this one. So when we came to the US in the late 2000s, like the aughts rather, like 2006, we brought that with us. So when we started here, it was kind of already in our DNA, and it's been the foundation of everything that we've done. Every program that we implement, every technology piece we try and implement, it's all about ensuring the sustainability of the platform is consistent and that we have the ability to recover the racks, find the racks, and ensure that it's not just a single use disposable item.
Okay. Okay. Kind of tied into that whole sustainability model is innovation. So, along the same line, how is innovation also an important part of your company culture?
So this is kind of a funny one, right? Because you think of a metal rack and, innovation doesn't necessarily jump out at you. And I know when I first started here, it's just over 17 years ago, I remember walking in and my first day, we were talking about how we can get RFID technology onto the rack to help alleviate the need of having racks being scanned in. Because obviously a dummy barcode is great. It at least allows you to track it. But we wanted to try and remove the need of scanning it in for our growers. And all we cared about was the scan out because that told us where the rack was going to try and recover it. Because it's difficult to recover a rack if you don't know where to look, right?
Mm.
So the scanning was a key piece. But eliminating the need of having to scan that rack back in allowed us to look at RFID technology because that was kind of in its infancy there. You had a lot of passive tags, which you saw a lot in the grocery market, but you didn't really see many active tags. And that's essentially what our tag is. It just beacons a signal every 2 seconds while it's in motion, and then it slows down to every minute when it's not in motion. So that allows it to conserve some battery. So innovation from that perspective, you never really thought of having this much data capability to be linked to a rolling rack. But that's essentially what it has. And now, 16 years later, we have 16 years worth of data, almost 2 million scans a year that allow us to then figure out where the racks are, who's losing them, where they, how long is it taking to come back from a place. It's allowed us to develop some programs around that scanning. So the innovation hasn't stopped with the RFID tag. It's basically been part of the continuation of what can we develop off of that that can make things a little bit more efficient.
Okay. Well, and along those lines as well, then, you talk about, innovation the past 16 years leading up to where we are today. As you look ahead, because as you said, I mean, you guys are always trying to innovate. What does that next wave of innovation look like for a company like Containers Centralen?
Brian, the holy grail of it all is a GPS enabled tag. I mean, if I can get to a GPS enabled tag, then that allows us, our customers, to always know where their racks are. And that eliminates so many of the challenges that we had, even with all this data that we have.
Mhm.
It's not chasing ghost racks, right? Making sure the data is refreshed, which is why we're trying to get into real time data. That's kind of on the new innovation front that we have coming.
Yeah.
But the GPS tag is where it's at. Unfortunately, we go to these trade shows every year and talk with vendors that are there, and the battery life is getting better.
Yeah.
But to have that consistent signal through a GPS tag is still, uh, it's still the thing we strive for. And
Sure.
if we have that, then that helps everything throughout the pool. But outside of that, and I hate to use a cliched term that I'm sure you're hearing throughout all of your conversations, AI.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, if you have 16 years worth of data and all the scans that go along with it, from growers to retailers down to the store level, we can now develop a recovery model that's based upon historical real life data that tells us how long does it take when this specific rack is scanned to a store, do we expect that rack to be recovered and it's available for recovery if it's empty?
Mhm.
Because we don't care if a rack has product on it at the retail store, because then if we go to pick it up, there's nothing there because there's
Right.
still product on it. We want to know when it's empty. So the timing of knowing how long it takes from a time a rack is scanned to the time it's recovered back in is helping us develop a AI recovery model that can then predict, based upon this store, based upon this retailer, this region, this state. It allows us to really dial in and know when racks could be available. And it's
Yeah.
a lot of historical data that can back that up.
Well, and I like that approach too, because when you hear all the time, folks talk about, there are so many tools out there for collecting data, and that's all well and good. But then taking the next step and okay, what do you do with that? How can you make decisions? How can you, you know, look towards the future and build all these systems into one program that can allow you to take the necessary action based on what you're seeing from that. So that's
Oh
what
yeah.
approach you guys are taking.
Yeah, we have some in-house developers that are working on a mobile app that is being tested right now at our depot network. And it's really the first time that we have live real-time data, which is kind of weird to say, right? Because with all this data we have coming in every day, we refresh our systems nightly. But it's amazing what you can accomplish if we're doing these recovery routes. And if driver A has a recovery route going to these stores, but driver B also has those recovery routes,
Mm.
as soon as driver A is there and is recovering those racks and that route is immediately updated on grower B's routing. So it basically tells him, hey, you don't need to go there because someone else was just there.
Yeah.
So the initial testing for our depot and recovery partners doing the same thing and building their own recovery routes has been fantastic. The feedback we're getting from them is great, and we just started trialing it at a couple grower customers in Q4 of this past year.
Okay.
So that's kind of on the horizon of all the things that's kind of innovative that we're looking at. That probably has the one of the shortest time frame of when that's going to be available.
My next conversation is with Allison Carlson, Head of Marketing Americas at Syngenta Flowers. Allison outlines how Syngenta is focused on improving genetics for both growers and home gardeners, as well as the need to be constantly innovating in varieties and genetics. So, Allison, I want to ask first about when it comes to Syngenta Flowers and your vision for the future in terms of plant breeding at Syngenta. How is that evolving and continuing to take shape?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting right now being in the breeding space because I mean, we every year all of the breeders have great new varieties and just new genetics to bring into the market. And we at Syngenta Flowers are uh, you know, definitely working on those improvements to the genetics to be more, like, grower friendly and, have our industry be the most efficient it can be, from that perspective, and then also, like, home gardeners be the most, successful that they can with products so that way they keep coming back and, want to become gardeners. But there's also this evolution of needing to provide more than just genetics as a breeder.
Yeah.
So that's why, we've invested a lot in our technical support and in our marketing too for, different like POP programs to support, retail programs for our genetics to really go from like end to end
Yeah.
on having good genetics, being able to tell people how to grow them most successfully, and then here's how you can sell it at retail.
Mhm.
So yeah, trying to kind of complete that loop of being like an end-to-end like breeder supplier.
Okay, and that technical support I know is critical because, as you have seen, you put together all these great new varieties that you show off at an event like California Spring Trials, then they make it into the grower's hands, and now it's up to the grower to make sure that they're doing things the right way, so any support that you can give them along the way, it's gotta be critical.
Yeah, and it helps with that speed of adoption too. Like
Yeah.
the early trials that we do with growers help with that too. But then if we know our genetics, then we become the teachers of like how to grow them the best way. So that way the grower's not having that trial and error phase. Like we've already done all the errors and we can tell you how to avoid them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and kind of in line with all that, I do want to ask as well about innovation. So as Syngenta looks to the future, how is innovation? How has it become an important part of your company's culture, and how does that tie into to some of your everyday practices?
Yeah, no, and that innovative part really is something that we're highly focused on at Syngenta Flowers because we don't want to be the like me too kind of breeder with varieties, like
Mm,
kind of capitalizing on something that someone has already done. We want to come with something truly innovative, like we did with Calliope and Sunfinity. Like we want to help really have these huge like step change improvements in our industry to create markets, expand markets, that really lift the whole industry with innovative genetics.
sure.
And so, we're really focused on that with what we uh how our breeding programs are managed and what we choose to launch. I mean, we definitely have to have improvements to our tried and true favorites. We have those every year in our new varieties. But we really do focus on innovation and, um, yeah,
Yeah.
creating something bigger.
Sure. Well, and the innovation, I'm sure, takes a special skill because I mean, you've got to be able to look down the road and understand. Okay, here's where the plant consumer, and not just the grower, but the plant consumer as well, is going to be a few years down the road. How do we respond to that now? Because as you know, I mean, breeding varieties takes years of development before you get something that you want. So that's a special skill that drives that innovation, I would think.
It does, and that really comes down to our people
Mm,
and their visions that they have. Our product management team, our breeders, our marketing teams, everyone really kind of coming together and thinking, "Okay, what is the next thing? Like, what are we feeling, how through data and our experiences where the market is going." So having that teamwork across our functions to unlock the innovation in our minds too is really important in our culture.
awesome, awesome. So as you look ahead, what excites you the most about the future of this industry that you're involved in?
Yeah, this is uh I think that this connection that people are kind of like as a society that we're remaking with plants, like people and plants for like it's not just functionality. Like it's not just landscaping and like, we need a tree here because there's supposed to be a tree. People are connecting with plants for like their mental health and
Yeah.
like they're being outside gardening for their physical health and having vegetable gardens, to and depending on how fruitful, your vegetable gardens are, you can I improve your health and, eating what you grow and, like, that kinda thing.
Yeah.
It at least gives you a connection to, okay, where food comes from,
Mhm.
and, growing flowers, uh, it's a great mental health thing to do and have connections with people. It's a people connector thing. Plants are connecting people.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I'm excited to see how that builds out in our society because I think ultimately that's going to lift up our industry.
Mhm.
But also, like we were just talking about with the innovation, okay, people are using plants in different ways than they have been. How do we as an industry need to change? And especially as a breeder, what we breed and then how we market it to these consumers for their different objectives that they have. So, yeah, I'm excited for that people plant connection.
Finally, I caught up with Eric Moody, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at UbiGro. Eric and I talk about why innovation is about both new technology and improving plant production, as well as how sustainability is defined by producing a better quality, higher yielding crop that will drive the long term future of your business. So, Eric, I want to start with your perspective on innovation, how innovation has become an important part of the company culture for you guys, and then also what does the next wave of innovation look like for you?
Yeah, great question. So UbiGro is a division actually of a larger company called Ubiquity.
Hmm.
Ubiquity stands for ubiquitous quantum dots.
Okay.
Basically, we're taking this very high tech technology, if you will, and it's a technology that's used in flat screen TVs and in these high tech environments, and we're taking it and making this technology ubiquitous across all certain industries.
Mm.
So UbiGrow is our part of that. That is a new innovation we see for the greenhouse industry. Quantum dots that we manufacture have the ability to actually change light spectrum. It doesn't filter out spectrum, but it changes light spectrum. And we're able to utilize that in horticulture by capturing sunlight and basically making sunlight more efficient. So it's a very innovation focus. We know there's a lot of growers out there that don't have lighting, can afford lighting, don't want to have the electrical expense or, the taking up on our power grid.
Right.
And instead they can see gains in their production out of just making sunlight work better for them. But yeah, so our company was really founded on innovation for things like this.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. Well, and I know tied to innovation, you hear a lot more today about sustainability and what it means for the industry. And I know you guys have a fairly unique approach to how you look at sustainability. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, with our parent company that, we're in the solar industry and all sorts of things like that as
Right.
well. But for UbiGrow in particular, I have this conversation with people all the time. They think plastic is not sustainable. You can't be a plastics producer and be sustainable. And my response to that is with what we're doing with UbiGrow is we're taking that plastic, virtually the same plastic that most growers are growing under,
Mhm.
and we're able to produce 20% more under it. And obviously that'll range from crop to crop, whether it's food crop or flowers or whatever it might be, but we're getting 20, even sometimes upwards to 30% increases in yield.
Okay.
So my question back is, if you have a plastic that's maybe a 4-year plastic, which ours is built to be a 4-year plastic now, don't you think if you're producing 20% more under that, that's a 20% step forward in sustainability?
Mm.
That's kind of how we look at that as well. Not to mention, one of the things we haven't spoke about yet is the technology that's in plastic is capturing UV light.
Mhm.
It's not filtering UV light. It's changing that photon to a longer wavelength and making it glow in red light, which is more efficient for photosynthesis. And We haven't been around long enough to test this theory, so it is just a theory. I should make sure I say that. But there's a good chance our plastics might last even longer than 4 years. So
Yeah.
then again, another step forward of because we're taking that UV out, and it's UV that typically degrades plastic quickly. Not only are you producing more under it, but there's a good chance our plastics could last even longer than some of your traditional plastics on them.
Oh, sure. Well, and when you hear about sustainability, you often think of it as that three-legged stool of, environmental sustainability, social, and then profitability. And that profitability is a key part of that. It sounds like that's where you guys are really focused on that. If you can, use technology like this to, produce not just a better crop, but more volume too, that's going to go a long way.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. As you look to the future of this segment of the industry, what excites you the most about the future of floriculture right now?
As a society across the board, not just in floriculture, but definitely in floriculture as well, a lot of our growing is being brought into controlled environment agriculture. And, I think that really has to be the future, especially when we talk about sustainability. Growing in fields is just, it's not sustainable for us anymore between the pesticides and the water usage and all of these things that you can do so much better in a controlled environment agriculture. So really excited, looking forward to that. Even with what we're doing, and then other technologies that we have that we are working on in the future. We have a glass product. We're actually doing studies right now with the USDA about working with glass greenhouses. We are moving forward with even like a retractable version where we can put our pollen dots into a shade cloth. So there's a lot of new innovation coming out, all of them based around how can we make that free resource of the sun work harder for us. So yeah, we're really excited about so many different avenues of growth, even just within our UbiGro brand that we can do.
Thank you for joining us. You can learn more about this and other topics at greenhousegrower.com, and you can also follow Greenhouse Grower on LinkedIn. Please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, and please leave us a rating or review as it helps other listeners find the show. The Greenhouse Grower to Grower podcast is produced by the team at Meister Media Worldwide. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower.